Hi, welcome to my channel, America Teacher, 5th grade. This week we are continuing our studies in learning about all things social studies. Here's the book, Making a New Nation, and we are right in the middle of, the kind of moving along in Unit 2. Chapter 3, Lesson 2, A Changing World. So we just had Christopher Columbus meet it, and again everybody gives him a hard time, but because of Christopher Columbus, our world did change, for the better, for the worse, probably both. But yeah, so we talked a little bit about the Vikings and how they did, even though they knew about it, they didn't really share that information with other people. They kept it to themselves. The Native Americans, I don't know if they were exploring, trying to, make connections with the other world. They were pretty happy to stay here. Maybe they did, and that's why, like the islanders, like the Hawaiian Islands, the people out in the Philippines and those places, I don't know if they came from Asia or if they came from the Americas, but it's pretty fascinating to think about that maybe some of them did try to go exploring, got lost and stuck on an island. But we are going to be learning about how Christopher Columbus changed the world, and because of him more explorers came, more Europeans came, and it certainly changed the Americas. So if we look at our timeline, sorry there, I'm kind of losing my voice. 1497, Cabot reaches Newfoundland and Labrador. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. 1513, Balboa reaches the Pacific Ocean. And in 1522, the Magellan expedition completes a voyage around the world. So 1492, I kind of count by tens, then 1502, 1512, 1522. So in 30 years, 3 decades, we went from just staying along the eastern hemisphere to now circumnavigating the world. And maybe you've heard of like a Magellan GPS expedition to kind of go around there, because I don't even know if he did that. We'll have to read to find out. And Magellan would definitely be one to read about the trip. And he was captain of the trip. I don't know if he came back. I think he may have met his demise amongst that, but his ship came back along with at least a few of the crew members. They had a pretty rough go of it. So a few things to know in lesson 2. Why did Europeans explore the Americas, and what did they find? Vocabulary, isthmus, on page 123, and that was also one of our geography terms, if you remember that. And treaty, page 125. And those are the only 2 that we are going to be learning about today. John Cabot, Amerigo Vespucci, Vasco Nunez de Balboa, and Ferdinand Magellan. Those are important people. Important places we will be learning about are England, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Philippine Islands. And our main idea and details. So either if you have the details, what do you think is the main idea? Or if you have the main idea, what are supporting details? You are there, our second person little fun paragraph to read, puts us in. It is June 1497, and you have been at sea for more than a month. Back in England, you signed up for this journey after hearing about Columbus's expeditions. However, now you are starting to have second thoughts. Fog is all around your ship. Almost everyone on board looks worried. This cold air chills me to the bone, says a crew. Says a crew member, "You squint to try to see through the fog, but it is of no use. Whatever is out there remains a mystery." And so just to kind of pull up the picture a little bit, here is a picture of John Cabot places the English flag on what is now Canada. So Christopher Columbus was out trying to claim land for Spain, and England is out trying to claim land for itself now. They're like, hey, yeah, maybe we should have listened, and maybe, because I know that Christopher Columbus also went to the King of England asking for his support, and he said, "Nah, we got our own guys." And they thought they had a route through the St. Lawrence River, but they didn't. But again, they were more up north, so this is a little bit more parallel with what they had going on. And so again, England is a pretty small country, and yet they had colonies all over the world. And because they were so small, they were trying to do that. They had developed their navy so that they could go exploring and conquering, if you would. And we're going to learn a little bit more about them. A northern voyage. Cabot sailed to present-day Newfoundland and Labrador, and so this is probably the land or the water between those two lands. Columbus returned 3 times to what he thought was the Indies. So he returned 3 times. So 3 + 1 is 4. He made 4 trips altogether to that. Yes, he was mistaken every time he went. He thought he was a little bit closer to China and the silks, and he really couldn't have been more wrong. However, in most hypotheses, we don't say that my hypothesis was wrong. We say my hypothesis was incorrect, and then we go on to explain it. So, he never found great riches, but he did show that it was possible to sail across the Atlantic, and he should get credit for that. Columbus's trips inspired several European rulers to send ships west to claim lands. In time, Europeans created a new culture in the Americas. Jean Cabot set sail. In England, King Henry VII heard of Columbus's success for Spain. The king paid an Italian sailor, another Italian, and if you didn't know, Christopher Columbus was Italian. He lived in a little port town, so where you live makes a difference. And this Italian sailor is Giovanni Caboto, to lead an expedition sailing west across the Atlantic. The English called him John Cabot. King Henry's aim was to help England compete with other European nations for land and wealth. In May 1497, so just 5 years, and I think it was even before Columbus's 4th voyage. In May 1497, Cabot and a crew sailed west on a course far north of Columbus's first route. After a long, slow journey, they reached land on June 24th. Once on shore, Cabot claimed the land for England. He then sailed south along the coast before returning to England. Cabot's son Sebastian joined him on this voyage. Years later, Sebastian described the place as a very sterile, lonely land. So sterile meaning pretty rocky, not able to really, grow a lot of things because it was so cold. I think that they could kind of do that. I know that they were hoping for richer places. At the same time, it was rather strategic for them to head north, because if they're like, well, maybe Columbus is just stuck in the islands of the West Indies, and if we go further north, then we'll get to Cathay, or now China, and we can finally start trading for those silks. But this land was not there, and the Native Americans who had fought off the Vikings, we'll see. I don't know if they're going to tell us what happens here, but I think even England was guilty of doing some kidnapping, if you will. I'm going to move this up so you can see all of that. And underneath that, I'll just show you later. When Cabot returned to England, he said he had found the Indies. Cabot, like Columbus, thought he had reached Asia. Many people today believe Cabot had actually reached the coast of present-day Newfoundland and Labrador, now a part of Canada. This was the same place that the Vikings had visited almost 500 years earlier. Main idea and details. What was the aim of King Henry VII when he paid for Cabot's expedition? Again, they want silks. They want jewels as big as your fist. Wouldn't that be cool to find an emerald or a ruby or a diamond that big? And that's what Marco Polo was coming back with. Okay, I'm just going to show you the little moose that were in there, and that's kind of fun to see. I've seen them out in the wild up in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Fun. Map makers. Map makers. In the 1500s, map makers made new maps of the world based on information from early explorations of the Americas. And so, you know, some are making flat maps, some are making globes or the spheres, along with a way to kind of help you mark like either the equator or at least the parallel lines that way. And so they started changing their maps. Remember, the technology wasn't quite improved. Prince Henry, he had a good thing with the Eastern Hemisphere, and his maps along those eastern coasts were pretty spot on, but he had an opportunity to improve his technology with the map making, and he kind of failed or missed out, I guess, you know, fear of missing out. He's like, he didn't have that fear, and he still missed out. All right, a new map of the world is our heading. Not everyone believed that Columbus and Cabot had found Asia. Amerigo Vespucci of Italy aimed to find out for himself. In 1499, he sailed to a place just south of where Columbus had landed. 2 years later, Vespucci sailed down the coast of South America. So he went even farther than Columbus had, but Columbus had a great skill at navigating, although his mathematical errors led him to believe that the earth was smaller than what it was. I believe Amerigo was like, this is interesting, but I believe the world is larger, and that was kind of the prevailing idea amongst the educated at the time. And he's like, so he was already maybe putting together a theory that this was a whole new land based on the information that the world was much larger than Columbus had anticipated. Amerigo Vespucci's new idea. Vespucci looked for signs that he had reached Asia, but he found none. The places he saw did not fit Marco Polo's descriptions of Asia. And nor does this kind of line. Remember, they have really good map outlines of Asia, and he's like, this map outline isn't matching, and I don't see the animals, and I don't see any of those things. Vespucci began to think that maybe Earth was larger than most people thought, and I'm thinking he probably thought that before. If so, that would mean Asia was farther away from Europe than Columbus believed. The naming of America. Over time, Vespucci came to realize that he, Columbus, and Cabot had found lands not yet known to Europeans. And I think that's key right there, is that, yes, we know the Native Americans were here, they had discovered them ages ago, but these were lands not known to Europeans. In 1507, a German mapmaker named Martin Waldseemüller published a world map that included these newly found lands. He named the new lands in honor of Amerigo Vespucci. Just takes one good connection right there. The land on this new map stood for the present-day continent of South America. Later, the word America was also used for the land known today as the continent of North America. Reading check. Main idea and details. How did Vespucci's voyage change how the world was seen? I would like 3 main ideas if you choose to do that little part of the assignment. You can just verbally tell someone. All right. Reaching the Pacific. Let's check out this picture right here. He looks really daring. Balboa reaches the Pacific. Balboa was 38 years old when he first saw the Pacific Ocean, one of the very first Europeans to do so. And that's not entirely true. Technically, every time they traveled to China, they had seen the Pacific Ocean just from that point of view, not from the America side. Reaching the Pacific. After Vespucci's voyages, other explorers sailed around the mysterious new lands. Not one of them found China. Still, Europeans wondered what these lands could be if they were not a part of Asia. Vasco Nunez de Balboa. The Spanish explorer Vasco Nunez de Balboa was one of the first Europeans to settle in the Americas. He had set up a farm on the island of, I always kind of pronounced it with Hispaniola, but they're leaving off the H. Hispaniola. Okay, no H. I learned something new. I don't know. It's decades of mispronunciation. I'll try to call it Hispaniola. But he was not a good farmer. Soon he owed money to many people. Instead of paying them, there's a reason to leave, he escaped from Hispaniola by hiding on a ship bound for what is now Colombia. So remember the king and queen of Spain wanted Columbus to set up colonies for Spain. They would said, we want our people there. And so Balboa came and he's like, yeah, I'll do that. I don't have much land here and I'm willing to do that. But he set up a farm, but wasn't really turning a profit, growing, whatever. I mean, it was a whole new land, so maybe it was very different than what he was used to. So he travels from an island down to what is now Colombia in South America. After Balboa arrived, he met the survivors of a failed Spanish settlement, so he meets more survivors. And they're all like, oh, yay, get us out of here. And he's like, nah, let's make this happen. Later, he helped them take land from Native American groups and start a settlement in what is now the country of Panama. So poor Panama. They've been, I guess, under European rule for a little bit. So they leave the area of Colombia, which is north of Brazil and South America, and then they go to Panama. Balboa heard about a huge ocean to the west. In 1513, Balboa and other explorers made their way west across the Isthmus of Panama, which connects North America and South America. An isthmus is a narrow strip of land that connects two large land areas. Did you remember that? In time, Balboa's group reached the Pacific Ocean. They proved that Amerigo Vespucci was right about an unknown continent. They said, here's the other side of this continent. And yep, there's no West Indies and no Chinese people or Catharians or however they called them back in the day. Reading check. Cause and effect. What caused Balboa to travel across the Isthmus of Panama? So I'm going to say in that part he was just exploring. He had heard stories maybe from the Native Americans and was just like, all right, I want to see this for myself. And so that was a risk he took. It didn't turn out the way he thought it would, but in the end, I guess he was still farming, or maybe he turned into a fisherman, I don't know, in Panama. Voyages of exploration, we'll explore. Let's go ahead and explore that now. So this is where most people were leaving. Most were from Spain and Portugal, England, kind of leaving from the Canary Islands. There's San Salvador, Columbus's first trip. And so there's Columbus, 1492. And he kind of repeated that. He was pretty similar in his other 3 trips. He maybe varied just a little bit. Might have gone to the Yucatan Peninsula, might have been down here in this area. Might have hit the tip of Florida. But you really have to write very detailed things so that map makers can draw a map of where you're at and say, at this latitude and longitude, we hit some land. At this latitude and longitude, we hit some land. This land was an island. This land, we didn't find it to be surrounded by water. So they're trying to kind of... Yeah. Anyways, Cabot, 1497. Here we go, from England, straight across, pretty parallel. And there's Labrador and Newfoundland. Vespucci, Amerigo Vespucci, 1501, 1502. Okay, he's down here. Balboa, 1501, he was over here. There's all of that area. And Magellan, who travels all the way around the tip of South America, goes up here, comes across on this side, Philippine Islands, comes back around and back up to Spain. So these are some pictures of what we believe they looked like. And movement, which explorers sailed across the Pacific Ocean? Hopefully you chose Magellan. Good. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and read about the Spanish coins right now. One side of this gold coin left shows King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. There they are, right there. And then there's the back of it. All right, I'm going to move that right there. A new view of the world. That's our heading. With the aid of finding a western route to Asia, the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan also proved that Vespucci was right. In 1519, Magellan left Spain with 5 ships and about 250 sailors. They passed through a waterway at the tip of South America. Then the sailors found themselves in the same ocean that Balboa had seen. Magellan named it the Pacific, which means peaceful. To him, its waters seemed calm compared with those of the Atlantic, which is nice in some ways and not nice because you kind of need some wind to help move you across with those sails. Here's our subheading, Magellan's long voyage. Magellan thought he could cross the Pacific in a few days. Silly. It took more than 3 months. Many sailors died of hunger and illness because the wind just wasn't moving them the way they needed to, and they probably needed to row, but I don't think that their ship was designed for that. Magellan himself was killed in a battle in the Philippine Islands, 500 miles off the coast of southeastern Asia. So over here are the Philippine Islands where Magellan was killed. One ship finally made it back to Spain in 1522. So more than one ship went with them, again, for help, but only one made it back. And let's see, he left in 1519. Took him 3 years to circumnavigate the world. And again, Magellan didn't make it. Its sailors were the first Europeans to travel around the world. And what a shame that we don't know all of their names, or their names don't make it into the history books. Only the captains do. And we're just like, oh, he died, but these people who actually did it, we don't hear any more about them. So I encourage you to, again, do some more research. Find out, are the names of those people out there? How did he die? Did he, was he killed by Native Americans? How was he killed? Did he just die of hunger? Did he die of an injury or an illness? Here we go. The Treaty of Tordesillas. I'm going to help there. I think that's Tordesillas. Hopefully there will be a place. Nope. They're not gonna tell us how to pronounce that one, so that's my best guess. As more expeditions were organized, more lands were claimed. Often more than one country claimed the same land. The Catholic rulers of Spain and Portugal asked Catholic church leaders to settle such a case. In 1493, church leaders drew a line on a map through the Atlantic Ocean. Portugal was promised the land to the east of the line. Spain was promised the land to the west. So here, I guess, is that line that was promised by those Catholic leaders, because these were both very good Catholic countries at the time. And they really didn't know they really didn't know how big this land was. They didn't. In 1494, Spain and Portugal signed the Treaty of Tordesillas. A treaty is an agreement between countries. In this treaty, Spain and Portugal agreed to move the dividing line farther west. They're like, yeah, I don't know about that. This change gave Portugal the land that would become part of the country of Brazil. And so Brazil does speak more Portuguese than they do Spanish anyways. They've changed it over time. All of them are kind of variations of either Spanish or Portuguese. And yet Spanish and Portuguese are still related. They are what we call our Romantic Latin languages, along with French and Italian. And what's the fifth one? There's a fifth one. I don't remember. All right, summary. After Columbus's voyages, rulers were eager to pay for trips across the Atlantic. Explorers such as Cabot, Vespucci, Balboa, and Magellan explored many different areas. Spain and Portugal divided the Americas between themselves. Spanish coins. One side of this gold coin left shows King Ferdinand. Oh, we read that already. Okay. Main idea and details. What did Magellan's expedition accomplish? Magellan's expedition accomplished traveling all around the world. And what's that big word called when you go all the way around? To circumnavigate, like a circumference. Go. All of those words are related. Okay, review. Here we go. Let's move that up. We're almost done. What to know. Why did Europeans explore the Americas, and what did they find? You can either tell somebody that in a complete sentence, or better yet, write it down. Vocabulary. Use the term treaty to explain how Spain and Portugal divided lands in the Americas. And so I think they were definitely their own countries, but they worked it out, and they had somebody that they agreed upon, their religious leaders, to do that. I know it wasn't fair to the indigenous people, but we're reading from the European view. Here we go. Point of view. Geography. What two oceans did explorers cross when they sailed west from Europe to Asia? Hopefully you can know that. Go back and check out the maps if you're not sure. Critical thinking. Again, this is part of the reason why I'm doing this, to improve our critical thinking skills, make it relevant. How do you think new maps of the world affected explorers? How do people use maps today? I think as people learned and they became more confident in their maps, they were like, yeah, let's go do this. And let's go see what else there is. Make a table of explorers. Make a table that lists the name of each explorer in this lesson and the area that person explored. Then use your table and the map on page 124 to trace their routes and describe the distances they traveled. So you could just do those 5. In the past, again, with other students, when I had a large class of 20 or more, I would literally just have students draw the name of an explorer out of a hat or something, and then I would have them look up what country were they from, what country sponsored them, because sometimes those were different. What years did they travel? What did they explore or discover or find out? Why are they famous? And then 1 or 2 interesting facts. Just kind of keep it simple, and then just share that with everybody or whoever's in your group. Okay. But for these 5, I suppose an individual can kind of quick do that on their own. Main idea and details on a separate sheet of paper. Copy and complete this graphic organizer. So a detail: Vespucci sails to South America. Balboa reaches the Pacific Ocean. And Magellan sails west to Asia. I don't have the teacher's one, but what do you think is the main idea? I think the main idea is that explorers started exploring more places, or you could say map makers now had more information to make better maps. An exciting time to be a map maker at that time. Like every year you're like, oh, you need to buy a new map from me, here you go. And now we're kind of like, oh, it's all the same. You don't, one map will last you for a decade or 100 years. And although back then they're like, oh no, new lands, so they were constantly building new ones. Okay, last little bit of information. We're only at 30 minutes, so we're still going to finish sooner, I believe, than yesterday's. But points of view, I think it's very important to learn from other people's points of view, and I am very excited to share this page with you. So, Christopher Columbus's voyages. In all, Christopher Columbus made 4 voyages to the Americas. There is no question that his voyages changed the world. The full meaning of these events in history is still talked about today. Some people see Columbus as a heroic figure, a man of courage, curiosity, and daring. Others see him as one who brought great hardship to people who meant him no harm. Here are 3 points of view in this ongoing debate, and it's been ongoing for over 500 years. Number 1. This person is Russell Means. Says Russell Means is a Native American leader. In a newspaper article, he wrote about Columbus's treatment of Native Americans. Columbus's arrival was a disaster from the beginning. He immediately began the enslavement of the Indian peoples of the Caribbean islands. I'm pardoned that. And I will say he did. I mean, the king and queen of Spain told him to set up colonies, and that's what he did. Although if you think about how the king and queen of Spain treated the Muslims, how did the Muslims treat the Spaniards before? So, we're just going back and forth, and how did the Native Americans treat each other? So, the Taino people, I think they were hoping that Columbus would maybe be a deliverer to them from the other tribes who were picking on them, and instead they just became more picked on. That's unfortunate. Robert S. McElvain is a teacher and author. He wrote about the effects of Columbus's voyage. Here he is, Robert S. The major long-term significance of Columbus's voyage is that It led to the mixing of the people of the world in an unprecedented scale and set in motion the process of making what would become the United States the most ethnically diverse society the world has known. And I believe that's true. You know, we talk about the importance of diversity and accepting diversity, and yet I believe America has always what we kind of call a melting pot. You know, we have people out there who have ancestors, Native American ancestry. They have maybe slave ancestry. They may go also be a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, or you know, of a state's pioneer history. There's like Utah pioneers. I don't know. So there's all these different groups, and you could be descendants of all of them. You know, you could be the descendants of slaves and slave owners, the descendants of Native Americans and European colonizers. I just feel like we don't go back far enough in our own family history to find that. And I feel that some people who have, you know, like really identified with one culture or another, we're really amazed that if you go back 5 to 7 generations, you will find something that you really weren't expecting. And I kind of feel like for the most part we kind of go back, unless we go back somewhere to at least 8 to 10 generations. I feel like we're mostly related. So again, be kind, be respectful. This could be a very distant cousin of yours. And we should all be respectful of the human race. So number 3 person is Kathleen Deegan. Kathleen Deegan is a teacher and author. Her book also describes the effect of Columbus's voyage on the Native Americans. Regardless of how many Tainos were living in Hispaniola when Columbus arrived, the stunning reduction in their numbers was the most shocking immediate repercussion effect of European contact. And so over 90% of the populations died, and that is tragic and horrific if you are living through it. We were certainly afraid that our latest pandemic of COVID was going to lead to something like that. Fortunately, it did not, but I think that's always a scare, that something like that could happen again. It's your turn. Summarize points of view. Work with a classmate to summarize the point of view held by each writer. Decide how each writer views Columbus's voyage. Make it relevant. Why might you and a classmate have different points of view about an event or an idea? You know, again, we can all, like we all experienced the pandemic, but maybe we had different experiences. Maybe you lost a parent or a grandparent during it. Maybe you felt really sad and depressed about being isolated. Maybe your parents lost a job because of that. And so we can all have different points of view based on our own experiences. And everybody's experiences are relevant and are important. And yet we still need to look at other points of view and have a kind discussion. So again, I just want to remind you to be kind, keep improving your self-discipline, your self-reliance, your self-respect, and as always, respect for others. Thanks for joining me, Miss America, and know that I think that you are fabulous, and I hope you have a fabulous day.